When I'm creating and using blocks, it's important that my blocks have predictable behavior when they're inserted into the drawing. The properties of the block, such as what layer it's on, its color, line type, and line weight, can be determined by the layer that it's inserted on, or can be determined during the creation of the block. Each one of them will have a different outcome when the block is inserted in the drawing. One of the common behaviors of blocks is that when they're inserted into a drawing, they will be placed on the layer that is currently active in the drawing. They may or may not assume other properties of that layer, depending on how the block was created in the first place. If I want to create a block that will inherit the properties, such as color, line weight, and line type, of the layer that it's placed on, I have to follow some rules. First of all, it needs to be created on the zero layer, and then set to inherit those properties. I've drawn this octagon, which is going to represent a table here in the kitchen. I want to make this into a block, and I would like this block to be able to inherit whatever layer it's inserted on. To do this, I'm first going to change my current drawing to the zero layer, and then I'm going to make sure that the object that I want to make into a block is also on the zero layer. Currently, the zero layer properties are set to default so that the color, the line weight, and the line type are all by layer, and those are the properties that will be applied when I make my block. With that done, I'm going to go to Blocks and References, Create Blocks. I'm going to call this Table for the Kitchen. I'm going to select the objects on the screen. I'm going to use this corner as my insertion point and say OK. And now this has been created as a block. You can see that now it says it's a block reference, its color is by layer, and the layer is 0. I'm going to go ahead and erase it. I go back home, change to the furniture layer, and I'm going to insert my kitchen table. Now when this is inserted, you can see, we'll look at its properties, that it's now on the furniture layer. Its color has been determined by the layer, as well as its line type and its line weight. So by creating this object on the zero layer with the property set to the default by layer, then this object will inherit the characteristics of the layer that's active whenever it's inserted. To show that this is true, we're going to change to the Doors and Windows layer, and then we'll insert it again. Now you can see that it has it's on the Doors and Windows layer, and it's taken on the color and other properties of that layer. We're now going to look at the behavior of a block that's been created using by block instead of by layer. I'm going to redefine this block that we already drew. I'll double click on it, and from the Edit Block Definitions, make sure that I choose that object, say OK, and it opens in my block editor. To make changes to this block, first I have to select it, and then I can change some of its properties. In this case, we're going to change it from by layer to by block for the color. For the line weight, we'll change to by block, and for line type, we'll change to by block. I'll close the block editor and save the changes. And now you notice that color is set by block. It's still on the furniture layer, and the line type is by block. With that, I'm going to delete it. So let's change to the furniture layer again, because it will, when I insert it, it will go in on the current layer. But we're going to change the active properties of the drawing itself, and I'm going to say that I want the active color property to be red. I want my line weight to be 0.6 millimeters, and in this case we're going to make this a hidden line so that we can see the effect. Now if I've done this correctly, when I insert my kitchen table now, when it's set to by block, it should inherit the properties of the drawing itself. It'll go in on the current layer. So if I look at its properties, it's currently on the furniture layer, but its line type is hidden and its color is red. So it's inherited the properties as they were set in the drawing. Anything that I draw right now would be set to these characteristics when I set them in my properties box. Only when my block is set to by block will the block inherit those, rather than inheriting the properties of the layer that it's being put on. Next, I'm going to consider if I wanted to insert a block that had properties that wouldn't be overridden by the layer or by the properties that are set in the current drawing. I can do this by setting the properties of the block to very specific color, line type, and line weight. First of all, before we start, I need to change the drawing properties back to by layer, which would be the default setting that you'd want to leave these at almost all the time that you're drawing, unless you have a specific reason to change the properties. Next, I'm going to double click on this block that we've already created and edit it. And I can select it in the block edit definition, and now I'm in my block editor. I'm going to select the object, and I'm going to change their properties. Instead of by block now, we're going to say that we want this to be green. We're also going to say that we want this to be a thick line. So I'm going to choose a thick line, and just for good measure we're going to make this a dashed line. And I'm going to close and save these block definitions. Now you notice that that block has immediately changed. I can see that because it was originally created, it was red on the furniture layer, and the line type is hidden. Let's see, if I turn on the line weight, I can see that it has a heavy line weight. So it has those characteristics. I'm going to go ahead and delete it, and then set the layer to the furniture layer, and we'll insert the block and look at its behavior. This time it's a kitchen table again. I bring it in, and it's been put onto the furniture layer. It says that the color is by layer, but you notice that it's not the color of that layer. It's green. If I turn on the line weight, its line weight thickness is specific to what I set it to, and its line type is also specific. So when you set the properties of the block to be a specific property, it doesn't inherit those from the drawing that it's being inserted into, or it doesn't inherit those from the layer that you're putting it on. It will always be consistent no matter what layer you put it on. Of these three methods for setting the properties of blocks, the most common method is to set by layer. I'm going to edit this one more time. Select this block. I'm going to make sure that it's set on the 0 layer. Going to change its properties back to by layer, and by layer for color, line weight, and line type, and save that edit. And now you can see that it has inherited the properties of the layer that it's on. That's your most common way of working with blocks, because you want them to be flexible. If you move them from layer to layer, they can change their properties like other objects in your drawing.